All right, greetings traders. Sam here from TradeDevils.com and TradeDevilsIndicators.com. Today I'm very pleased to introduce you the latest lineup in our indicators and tool suites for NinjaTrader 8, and that is the Devil's Footprint. So I'm over here, I'm on our site, I've clicked on products and indicators. Now I've got our full lineup here, but I'll draw your attention, bottom row, the newest entrance here is the footprint order flow indicator. Now I refer you to this page, and it's very possible you're watching this video as a result of having visited this page, but you also may have gotten here from YouTube or some of our other content on the web, and I just draw your attention here because this will be a good resource to refer back to while I'm going to go through some of the detail here and some of the options and stylings and signal setups that we have built into our footprint chart. You're not going to remember them all just having watched the video, and then rather than rewind or rewatch the video, this will be a good place to refer back to if you have questions or something piques your interest. Pretty much everything here that I'm going to discuss in this video here will be here to refer back to, with the exception of some of the styling and color choices here that we'll go through relatively quickly. But again, in terms of all the features that we're offering here, there's a lot of content here to digest here. So I want you to have this and just be reminded of the fact that this is a place you can refer back to. Of course, you can always reach out to it as well. All right, so with that said, let me switch over now here, and I've got a couple of charts side by side. You can see our footprint chart over here on the right, but I want to start here on this 2000 tick chart just to draw your attention to something that's important. Now, while it's true, most brokers will offer you level 1 historical tick data, and that's a requirement to add our footprint chart to NinjaTrader. But just you want to double check, because some don't. Surprisingly, some don't. Now, you do not need level 2. But you do need level 1 historical data. So before either you're working through a trial or making the purchase here into our footprint chart, just double check, just be sure that they offer it. Okay, so with that said, let me just show you how to get to turn that on here. So in case you're not aware, and some of you, so just bear with me if you're aware of this. So I'm just going to go over to our data series by clicking on the chart here, and this is what I'm referring to. Tick replay here has to be enabled on any chart where you're adding the footprint chart. Now here I'm on a 2000 tick chart. I don't need to enable it here, and you don't want to enable it if you don't have to. Now, Ninja requires that you do for its footprint chart, because it's got to pull all of that historical tick data onto the chart. So it's important that you do that here, but you don't want to have that default setting for all of your charts, because it requires Ninja to pull more data that would not be relevant here. So I just draw your attention to that. Now I'm going to, having acknowledged that here, that you need to have that on. As we come back here, now of course you'll see here in the data series that I have it turned on. Now, one thing that's important, that again, if you're not aware of this, when you turn tick replay on, Ninja is pulling a huge amount of data over to fill in the content of these bars. So you want to be careful about loading up too much data here. My suggestion is 3, 5 at the most for shorter time frames. So for example, I know that with an 8 range chart here, if I make a change and I have to reload the indicator, it's about 12, maybe 15 seconds before it'll reload. Now, if you go to 15 or 20 or 30 days of data, it's going to be annoyingly long to pull all that data, and unlikely that you would need that much on one of these smaller time frames, right? You might go out to a larger time frame and do it that way. So be careful about having this number too high. It'll just be frustrating while you wait for it to reload. As a matter of fact, in the interest of saving time and not having you as a viewer sitting through 12-second reloads, you'll notice that I'm going to edit throughout the course of the content here in this video to save you from having to watch a 12-second reload while I demonstrate things that we're going to change as we go through the course of the video. All right, so just a little reminder, 3 is a good starting point here, and that's how I'll leave it here. Now, I'm going to just kind of pull back here and show you what I'm, well, that's a little more pullback than I needed. All right, so I'm just, again, as I always do, I'm recording this on the weekend. It's Sunday the 30th, and I'm just using the last 3 days of data. I never cherry pick data. There's never any need to do that here. Now, of course, you can scrunch it up here right? And you've just got an 8-range chart. You can't see any of the detail. I do have a little bit of information down here, so but you can always pull back to get a bigger picture view here, but you're going to lose that bar content. So I do that just to kind of introduce you to a couple of things. First, I should note here, just to kind of frame the day, I've got our initial balance indicator on here. If you're interested in the initial balance, you can go and watch that video here. But I do it just to kind of frame the day so we get a sense of where we are and we're not just floating out in space, and you get some context. So this being Friday, of course, this was Friday before the holiday weekend, so no surprise. We got pretty much just a rotational day. We had a little push outside of the IB, a little push down here. But for the most part, we just stayed within the IB range. So let me open this up here, and we won't go to the tail end of the day here. Let me just pick up a little section here, and we'll start going through some of the options and some of the styling choices and some of the features that we've built into our footprint chart. So this is most likely, if you've seen a footprint chart, this is the format you might be used to seeing. Now we're giving you some styling choices here, so this may or may not look like what you're familiar with seeing if you've worked with or viewed footprint charts before. But so let me just to start here, and again, here we are. This is tail end of the day. Now what you're looking at here is the more traditional layout here. So let me get into the indicator here. So here we are within the indicator. Now, of course, all of our indicators are in the TDU folder here. So if you're working a demo, you'll recognize that. Now here I'm just down to TDU footprint. So you'll note here I have a few other things on the chart, but I've just made them, I've hidden them so as not to distract from our focus here. And we just work off of what we can see here with the footprint chart. So we start off with some styling choices. Now, right now, this is, as I just suggested, this is most likely the styling that you're used to seeing, which is a table choice. Now, we're giving you a bid-ask or a delta with regards to how you want to view the information here. Now, I'm going to stay in table here as we work through some of these features, but then we'll also look at getting both delta and bid-ask as well in either a table or in different styling choices here. So it just comes down to personal preference, how you like to see the information. I'm used to working with table. We have done a little customization here because I've hidden. So for example, in a full-blown table, you'd have all of the horizontal lines here. I've just made those transparent, so I'm just focusing on the bid-ask content. And then you'll see here the little highlighted bar here. This is where the highest amount of volume traded within that bar. So it's essentially a VPOC, right? So it's our volume point of control within that bar. But we're just highlighting it here because it can be handy if you're looking for areas of support and resistance. If you see VPOCs all in a line across or very close to each other, that may indeed be an area of support or resistance you might want to keep your eyes on. So we're just doing that just to, again, make it a little bit easier at a quick glance to see where you might anticipate a reaction. So again here, now working down here, this is your layout choice. So we're going to stay with table, and then we'll look at it in bid-ask as well as delta. So a couple of things right off the bat. Now let's see if I can take that. Oh, I can. Okay, so you'll notice here, there's content both above the bar and below the bar. Now, we're giving you the option to either have this information shown twice, as it is here, above the bar as well as below the bar, or to just have it show above the bar. Your choice. Many people that have worked with footprint charts are just in the habit of looking down below to get more historical context. So in this example, I've got what I choose to view. This is my trading template. This is all I'm looking for, but we're giving you options to look at more information here. But my point being that you can look at it either above the bar or below the bar or both. And that's what I refer to here when we talk about the statistics. I can turn this on or off. So if I can show it or not show it. In this case, I think particularly if you're new to working with footprint charts, there can be some advantage. And the one additional benefit that you get here, we have a row here for delta signals, which we'll go through in detail here through the course of the video. But that can be one more little benefit of having this either above, below. And of course, you could choose to, pick however you want to look at it, above, below, or both. Right, but the benefit here is we can see the delta signals firing below. I know those are just little dots for you, but we'll go through those in just a moment. So that's the first choice that you have. What's the styling? Table, right? That's how we have set now. Of course, you can change all of the colors, and I won't bore you with going through all of this, but you can change the font, the text, the color, all of this, which would be very typical if you're used to working with Ninja indicators. These are all just color choices and styling choices. Now, when we get to what's in the table, in this case, I can have it either show me bid ask, volume, delta, or the diagonal delta. All right, now, most people will be familiar with bid ask here, right? So you're seeing all of the bid ask on each one of those bars. I should mention this. I'm working with an 8 range bar here. Right, so this is relatively common for an ES day trader working with order flow. It's nice, clean, easy math. It's 8 ticks, $100 a bar. Easy to work with here, and friendly to the S&P if you're looking intraday at this kind of detail. It's what I use, but people have different choices. Some people use much smaller, some people much larger. Others prefer time-based. I use a combination of the two, which you'll see here in a minute. But on this 8 range chart here, so as we look here, I've got the bid ask within a table with the outlining borders of the table hidden or made transparent. You can see here they're made transparent. Again, this is all just styling and color choices that are available to you. It's up to you as to how you'd like to view them. What's important here is first the styling choice. How do you want to view it? And then what do you want to fill that content with? So for example, what we're looking at here is table with bid ask. Well, let me close that here, and then I'm going to bring over and show you 2 examples where we are changing the content. So here I've got it set at table, but I've got bid ask. So I can see the benefit here is that you get a bit of a volume profile, if you will. All right, so here we still see that this is the VPOC of that bar, but I can see the kind of the volume as we work through that bar. Same kind of idea. You can look for high volume clusters as we see here. This may potentially be an area of support or resistance or some area that would draw your attention to. Now you do see some of the bars here have an outline on them. We're going to get to that in a second. It's just alerting you to something that's happening within that bar. But I just want to first walk you through showing you, and this may be what you're used to seeing, where you get this kind of volume profile. Again, here's a nice big cluster of volume. It's pretty straightforward here, but you see we come back here and we test this volume before we head lower. Again, we're not going to make this a training video, but some things that will be obvious to you. And again, there's some other content that's on the chart here that we'll go through in a second, like some of these big dots here. But I just want to get you clear on what your choices are in terms of how you're viewing the data. A lot of people like this particular format here. I've just gotten used to working with table, so that's what I like to do. Now, coming over here, I'm back to table, but again, I've changed the content, and now I'm looking at the delta. All right, so I've got just the delta. So what you'll note right off the bat here is that I get positive and negative numbers. So we're no longer looking at the bid ask. We're not looking at the volume at that tick. We're looking at the delta, and this is diagonal delta. So what I'm seeing here is that on this particular, at this price tick here, as we're working through this bar, I've got an imbalance here, which is highlighted by the red, showing me a negative 78. So I've got a negative balance. Now coming here, I get positive. So again, negative and positive. I'm not looking at the bid ask volume at that tick. I'm just looking at the volume, or pardon me, at the delta. So this would be for an experienced footprint trader who's used to looking at this might be something that you would add into the lineup in addition to all the bid ask, that you might keep this as well. Again, this would be for more of an experienced user who has a specific need or interest in looking at the market in this format, because you don't lose this information when you're looking at bid ask. What we're doing here by displaying it this way is just we're highlighting it so you can see it more quickly at a glance. So if you're in the heat of the battle or making a quick trading decision, this can be a good way to get there. Again, these are all just styling options, right? Whatever your preference is, we want to give anyone whatever their experience level is or has been, those choices. And maybe you're starting out, you get used to table, but then you find some applications for the delta format that would appeal to you. Again, just options for you as the trader. All right, so I think let's carry on here. So stand by here and we'll dig into that again. So back in a sec. All right, let's carry on here. So now you've seen all of the choices in terms of what's available to you here, and then the layout choices available here. All right, so again, here's all our color information we just went through. Again, these are styling and color choices. the way this is laid out here, based on what you want to see here, we're giving you the styling features is sort of in categories. So table colors, bid-ask colors, right? How you want to style the delta colors. And now, having been through that, we get to the imbalances. Now, this is, again, your choice as to whether or not you want these on the chart or not. We are putting all of these on, which is how it defaults, right? So you'll get all of these turned on by default. These are, for lack of a better term, I'll call these industry norms that you would find consistent amongst footprint traders and order flow traders. These are customizable to your heart's content. This is just a good starting place, right? These values with regards to being an imbalance and what those percentages would be. So good starting point, customized to your heart's content. Now, additionally, right, so here now we get into all the color choices here with regards to those imbalances. Now, before we get into actually what imbalances are, just know that as you're working through a chart, and you might like a different background or different color scheme here. So all of that is customizable to your liking. Now we're going to circle back to what these actually are as we get into the signals that are on the chart and then the delta signals as well. But just to carry on with our styling choices here, we have the option to show or hide the unfinished business, which is a failed auction. So you can either show it, or hide it, color choices as well. And then same thing down as we reach the bottom here, the footprint summary. Now you'll note here, as I was saying earlier, you have the choice here of what you want to see. This is what I choose to look at. But so for example, if I wanted to add the cumulative delta, I could add the cumulative delta here, or the cumulative delta volume, or all of these are available to you to show above or below, right, or both. Right, whatever you prefer. This is what I use. This is enough for me to make a trading decision. Sometimes too much can be problematic. But again, it's up to the individual trader. And same thing, color choices, styling choices, background, cell choices, all sorts of color and styling choices for you. Then we get down into the delta signals. We're going to circle back onto this. Color choices for those signals. Paint bars. Do you want to paint the bars or not? Right? Again, just standard Ninja indicator features and styling choices that are available to you. So that pretty much covers it. Okay, so we're going to circle back all the way to our imbalances. All right, so first up, let's start with our buy imbalances on either side here. So we've got a bright blue and a red. Okay, let's just quickly make sense of that. So whenever we have a delta imbalance, we want to be, well, order flow traders would be interested in looking for points, technical pivots, areas where you might be anticipating the market to react a certain way or to continue in one direction or the other. You might be looking for delta imbalances. Now, again, I'm going to assume that those of you that are reviewing a video like this are clear on what a delta imbalance is. It's a relatively simple concept, right? It's just aggressive buyers versus aggressive sellers. Who's in control here, right? Without doing a full-blown course on order flow here, which we will be introducing in the near term. But for our purposes here, I just want to draw your attention to the feature. So whenever we have a sell imbalance, well, so here you can see it's 54 to 382, right? So we have a clear sell imbalance yet again, 603 to 114. Now on the buy side, here we get some buy imbalances. Here I've got 365 to 73, so I get a buy imbalance here. Same thing here, I've got 98 to 14. Here's a sell imbalance, 269 to 45. So it's always on a diagonal. It's very easy to read, but it can be. When the market's moving quickly, certainly it's advantageous to have them color coded. And again, you don't have to choose these colors. This is just what I use. But here we see a nice string of, as the market is selling off here, we see imbalances and negative delta all the way down. And then, of course, you see also the VPOC getting lower and lower as we go down. So if you were in this trade, this might be encouragement to stay with it. As you're seeing all of that as the market fell on that swing heading lower. Now, that's the color coding choices for imbalances. All right, and now above the chart, of course, we're getting our delta percentage here, and that's represented as a percentage here. So we're getting, not only are we getting delta, min, max, we're getting the delta signals, but then above the bar, I'm getting the percentage, right? How bearish, how bullish via that percentage. Again, you can show whatever you want down here, but you can also replicate it up here. I'm just used to looking down below, and I want to see those delta signals, so I like to have both, right? Now, here's an example here where we get a sell imbalance. So what we have here is a bar that closes on the high. So we get just our traditional candlestick. We get an open, high, low, and close. So opening here, closing here. So I've got an up bar, and I've got a couple of imbalances here, but I have a negative delta, right? That triggers that little orange dot here. Again, color to whatever your heart's content is. I just am choosing orange here so it stands out from the other color scheme. So I see that I've got a negative imbalance here, right? So we can see the negative 15 here is the negative 15. I've got so I've got my delta, I've got my percentage here, I've got my total volume, and then I've got my bid ask. So again, this is all just, whatever you want to see here. And then if you wanted to, so for example, here I've got the delta in bright red and then the percentage is in that gray. But if you wanted to, for example, put the percentage into a brighter color or a different color, your choice, or feature it down here. All right, so let me move over here I'll see if I can find it. Let's go the other direction here. We can find a buy imbalance, which I'm sure we can find. So here we have a buy imbalance here, right? So we have a bar that closes on the low, so we have essentially a reversal bar. We open and close down here, leave all of this all of this wick, yet we have a positive delta, right? And the delta percentage is 2.57. So that triggers the green dot here. Here we have the same thing, but on the negative side here. So I've got a negative imbalance. So I've got an up bar with a negative delta at 25%, triggers that orange dot. So a delta imbalance here is not necessarily something to act upon. It's more alerting you to the fact that potentially, right, there might be some sort of change in the rotation. But it's not as though if you were short here off of this, if you see an imbalance, you need to panic and get out of the market. It's just you certainly want to be aware of it, right? So we're not letting that pass without missing it. Now, additionally, here you see the big yellow dot, right? Now that is when we have a high volume imbalance here. So what we're getting here, you'll note here, it's 1809 to 307. So we have a huge, we have a very large imbalance here, and the yellow dot is notifying us of that imbalance, right? So if you just looked at the differences in numbers, you'll find that something that big is going to stand out. So we're alerting you via that yellow dot, and again, color to your liking. I just put it in yellow so that I don't miss it, because I want to be aware of that. Hey, all of a sudden here I've got a big imbalance here at this level, and of course we can see the market starts to rotate lower, right? It ends up going back higher. So again, that's actually a good example. This doesn't mean sell it, heavy. It just means that perhaps we've got a market rotation here. So as we come down, now we get some imbalance here at the low of the bar, but then look what happens here. So we're not really selling off. So this may be the kind of thing that would alert your attention to the fact that, hey, I've got a big imbalance here. I've got two imbalances. I've got three imbalances here on the sell side here that trigger the red outline, but the market's not selling off, right? As a matter of fact, coming off of that, now I get a buy imbalance at the low. My VPOC is now coming back into the range, and now I'm pushing higher. So here we just have typical rotation within the S&P. Right? We're going to sell off, rotate up, rotate back down. This is Friday, so this was very much of a rotational day. So I think that's covering our imbalances here that are on the chart. The one other thing here that I'll draw your attention to here are these lines you're seeing here. So this is the feature here that I referenced where we have unfinished business. So we have an incomplete auction here. So at a good pivot high or low, you would want to see a 0 on one side or the other. So here we get an unfinished auction, and we extend that. Well, by default, it will extend for 5 bars, because what tends to happen is the market will come back, right? It finished that auction, right? So it tends to be a magnet for the market. So we'll extend this for 5 bars. Again, you can set that to whatever you like. But so here we rotate down a little bit, and here we finish. We take care of that unfinished business, that incomplete auction up here. And that you'll find that that's very commonly what will happen if the market is rotational. We'll come back and we'll finish up that auction at that level. Same thing here. We've got a buy imbalance here on the low. Pardon me. We have an unfinished business low here. You can see the auction is incomplete at the low, right? We don't get a zero. So we have unfinished business here that gets resolved right here. Again, right? That's why typically 4 or 5 bars should be enough. But if you want to extend it further, you can. We take care of that unfinished business here. Oh, this one goes here. I can't remember what our setting is here. We'll have to take a look at it here. So we're going past 5 bars here. So we'll go, and now we finish the auction right up here. So here's just, again, it's your choice on color, styling. I like the dash dot just to make it stand out. Unfinished business gets resolved right here. All right, so you can see of the things that we've discussed here, I've got a pretty good view of what's happening in the market here. So I can see a high volume imbalance here. I've got some regular just delta imbalances here. Let me kind of open this up so you can see it a little bit better. Here I've got imbalances. Here I've got multiple imbalances within the bar, which triggers that green outline. And then we had some selling here as well. Oh, I thought we could find. Here we go. So here we've got multiple imbalances that trigger the red outline, and we looked at that a little bit earlier. Here we've got multiple buy imbalances trigger the green outline. All right, again, change the color to your liking, and then we run into unfinished business as we end the day. All right, so that I think covers what's there. Okay, so let me. What I'm going to do is go into the delta signals here. So I'm going to pause the video here. I'll be back in a second, and we'll just isolate these one at a time. But rather than reset and make you wait 12, 15 seconds, I'm just going to do some quick edits and show these one at a time. Okay, back in a sec. Okay, so now we'll look here at our delta signals. So you'll note here I've just turned on the delta surge only. Now we have multiple delta signals that will fire down here, but I want to focus on them just one at a time. So delta surge turned on. Again, color choices are yours. I think it's helpful to have them be as striking as they can relative to that background here. So what light blue, and I think these will be the defaults. Light blue will be your surge color. So let me turn that off here. Now a delta surge is relatively simple, but it's, again, as you're working through the course of the day, it would be easy to miss this. So it's kind of a nice feature to have this highlighted. So a delta surge happens over 4 bars. Let me bring this down a little bit. So you'll see here I've just drawn this line here to identify the 4 bars that cause this to trigger. So the requirements here for a delta surge are that we have a positive delta here, and it's a pretty good one. So we got a positive 424 here. Well, now let's bring this down so you can see this. Now going into the next bar, well, we push higher, but we get a negative delta. Now the qualifications are that we start with that positive delta, then we go negative here. Now the next bar must have an increased negative delta here. So we go from minus 693 to minus 2375, and then the 4th bar must be even higher. We go from 2375 to 2458. That causes the trigger down here to go off to alert you that you have a delta surge. So what started out as positive has now accelerated to the downside. Now it's not so much a signal to buy or sell, but rather to alert you to the fact that you may very well have a more meaningful sell-off here or a downswing. You know, it's all relative to how you define a move, right? You might be after 2, 3, 4 ticks, or you might be after 20, 30 ticks, but it's alerting you to the fact that we've gone from a positive to a negative, and that's sustaining over multiple bars. Ding, right? Delta surge. All right, now let's quickly, I'm going to switch back here and we'll look at just delta divergence. Now here I've just got delta divergence highlighted here. Our divergence is going to be in this bright magenta pinkish color here. So we'll note as we work through it here, we're just looking for delta divergence. Okay, so let's work through here, and here's one right off the bat. Okay, so what's important for the delta divergence, because you'll note here we have a delta divergence here, but that's a different type of signal. We have an up bar with a negative delta. A delta divergence signal that's going to fire down here requires that we're putting in a new pivot, right? So from here, with markets tracking down, we get a new low here, yet I get positive delta. Well, now this white line here happens to be the initial balance low, and this is towards the end of the day, but it's kind of an easy example that you can see. as we put in this new low, we get positive delta. Let me see if I can find a buy. Well, here's another sell side. Right, so we get a slightly higher high here, right? We get one tick higher here, but we get a negative delta, right? So it's alerting you to the negative delta off of the idea that we have a potential pivot here. Let me see if I can find a buy side here. Same thing here. These are pivot highs, one tick higher, right? But we get negative delta. Let's see if I can find a buy side. See if I can find one here. All right, so here we go. All right, so here coming down to the low, this is the opening range low. So we've come down with negative delta. Now I'm getting a fresh low here prior to these two bars, so I get a potential pivot. Okay, you could think of it as a fractal. So I've got a pivot low here, but I get a positive delta, right? So I get a new low, positive delta, and we move on. Oh, same thing here. I get a new high, right? Per this tick here, negative delta. Triggers the delta divergence, right? So simple signal, but something to pay attention to. It may just alert you to potentially, right, just a rotation in this case here. So again, we're getting one tick higher here, negative delta divergence. Okay, here I've got the delta flip highlighted, right? So that will be our delta flip color. Will be here in orange, right? We want this to stand out, and I had to go back a couple of days to find one. This is not as common of a signal. Let's just take a look at it. It's a 2-bar pattern. And as the name might imply, what's happening is we're getting a complete reversal in the delta. So here, this is a good example. Now we'll get to this this red bar here in a second here, but for the time being, I just want you to focus on the delta here. So what we see here, we've got a very negative bar. So we've got a negative delta of 929, and you'll note down here that if we look at the max and the min delta, we've essentially closed on the low of the delta, right? So there's barely any positive delta. We just have one delta here. So we're on the low, and that's an extremely negative bar, right? We are also getting multiple imbalances on the low, which is triggering that. Now, when we go to the next bar, we get the exact opposite. So we've got a complete delta flip. So here, now we're closing on the high of the bar. We've got a delta of 303. And you'll note that the max delta, well, not exactly, but our max delta is 316. So we're closing almost on the high of that delta, and we've only got a -2 for the minimum delta. So we've gone from max delta down to max delta up, right? Implying that potentially here, to be alert to this, you've got a potential reversal underway, and of course that may just be for a rotation, or it might be the low of the day. You don't know, but so it's something to be alerted to. Is the reason we offer that as a signal to be identified to. Now, while we're here, and we've got this perfect example here, all the red bar is doing is whenever we get imbalances that are stacked on top of each other here, and the default is for 3, in this case negative imbalances on top of each other, we're going to trigger this red bar. And now we have it set to run for 5 bars. You can extend it, of course, right, like all of this, you can set it to whatever color or length that you'd like. But this is the market's talking to you here, right? So we've had a big sell-off here. What's interesting is after that big sell-off and we get the stacked imbalance here, we go right into a delta flip, right? So this is interesting sequence here. The market seems quite uncertain as to what it wants to do. We actually are also here at the IB low, which may be causing some of that. We'll use that indecision as we rotate up, rotate down, then rotate up again. So a couple of things happening here, but there's the delta flip, and you'll note that if you were to apply that to your chart here, despite all of the rotation that we have here throughout the course of the day, here's another stacked imbalance, right? And these are negative. We don't see another delta flip, right? They're a bit more rare to see that kind of complete bar reversal, right? So I had to go back to, I think it was Wednesday, to find one here. So definitely something to be aware of, right? Again, it's personal preference is to whether or not you want that highlighted, but by default, those will all be set. It's just you're gonna, the orange dot goes off, and you're, if you haven't invested the time and energy into understand what that's telling you, right? That's partly why I go through it here in the video, but also why you have that page on our website to refer back to. All right, so the delta flip. Okay, now here for a delta tail, again, I've just got delta tails highlighted here. That's going to come up in this seafoam green here, which we see it right here. All right, so that's the only thing we're going to focus on is delta tails here. All right, now one thing I should note here, I thought this would make it easier for you to spot this. So, and I've used this as an opportunity to show you another format here. So we're now still in the table in terms of our styling, but now all I'm looking at is delta, right? Not diagonal delta. I just want delta. So I end up with only one number, one row of numbers on one side because I'm not looking at diagonals. I'm just looking at delta at that level. So let me take that off, and so here we see a tail here. So a tail happens when we have a positive delta, we get an up close, but we have negative delta on the tail or on the low end. So here's a selling tail. So here we have negative delta. We've got negative delta on the bar. We've got negative delta on the bottom half of the bar, but on the upper top of the bar, upper bit of the bar here, we have positive delta, i.e. via positive numbers, negative numbers down here. Let's see if I can find another one here. Here we go. Here's kicking off here. So we have positive delta here. We don't have, so we have positive delta, we have a down bar, but note we have negative delta at the low, and then we have positive delta at the high. So this alerting you to potentially what you might anticipate in the next bar. See, here's here's a couple in a row where we have negative delta down bars here, but note we have positive delta at the top of the bar here. Well, essentially the wick is positive delta. Then as we go down through, as we tick through the bottom half of the bar, we go to negative delta, and then we get the same thing here. We have positive delta on a negative delta bar. The positive's at the top, right? Negative at the bottom. We actually alternate here, so we go positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, positive, negative, negative, right? So we are getting more bearish as we go down. Let's see if I can find a buy side here. Well, here's also here we're positive delta on the top of the bar, negative on the low. Right? So this again just kind of drawing your eye to these things where this might be so if you were focusing on this type of trade, you might lean into this kind of format where we work with the table. You still get the VPOC, right? We're just looking at delta, not bid ask, not volume, just the delta at that level. So here we've got positive delta at the top, negative delta at the low. Right. Same here. We get positive at the top, negative at the low, and here we get the opposite. Well, that's a mighty skinny bar. I think you get the drift here for a fatter candle that would show it a little bit better. So here, positive, negative, positive at the top, negative at the bottom. It's just one more thing just to be notified, just an alert, and it's a heads up. Right? Perhaps you've got another rotation that's underway. Okay, I think between the content that I've covered here in this video with regards to styling, parameters, and some of the features that we built in here and the content that's on the webpage where we started that you can refer back to, I think we have all of the features and parameters and options are covered here. I thought we'd just finish up here in the last few minutes here with just a couple of practical examples. Now, I would tell you that the best way to use a footprint chart is conjunction with more traditional technical analysis here, and then focusing in on critical pivots where you might be looking for some edge to get into or out of a position a bit earlier here. So I thought we'd just start here, and just with a typical chart you might be working with for traditional TA. Here's a 2000 tick chart on the ES. Again, I've just got our initial balance here, and the opening range here is being highlighted IB via the white lines. So if you were looking at this, and if you've followed any of my teaching, you know that this is an area we'd want to pay attention to. This is the first visit to the IB high. Since we established the IB high, this establishes our low. Right at the open, we establish our high. Now we know from much screen time and study that the first visits to the IB high and low are often met with an algorithm there that is there to fade that visit. So here as we come up, and again I'm just using Friday's data, we come up to our first visit here. Now granted we do get through, and this is I think we get through by 6 ticks, right? So it's just so even an 8 range bar here we don't get any carry through. So we're just kind of hovering here at the IB high on that first test as the market struggles in terms of what we're going to do with it here. So let's just focus in on that section here over on the footprint chart. So here we are now. First here was same time of day, where it's a little afternoon here, although this is not time based, but you can see there was just afternoon. Now here are those 6 ticks. Here's that range here that we put in that gets us get our final pivot up here. So this is our first hit at the IB high. Now, as we get up here, notice what happens. Now we've gone from, we get a combination of here. We have a couple of delta signals firing here. So we have a surge, then we have a delta divergence here. So as we're moving up with positive delta into the IB high, all of a sudden I get a big negative delta here. I can see some imbalances at the high, right? So I get a 649 against 120. So the market is starting to come down. My VPOC still a little bit lower, right? On the note, VPOC is parallel, right, on these two bars. Now, as we come out of this bar here, now all of a sudden we start to accelerate. So I get the delta divergence here. Remember, it's one tick higher here, and I get a negative delta, so I get delta divergence. We start to move lower here. Now, note in this bar, I've got no one on the buy side, right? This happens so fast. It's just, again, these are not time based. So an 8 range can happen pretty quickly. Now here we get, almost nothing here. We essentially we just have a flat bar here, a doji bar. So we've got imbalances at the high. The VPOC again, we're heading lower after this one unusual bar, and then down, down, down. Now here I get a little bit of an imbalance. So this move here, as we hit the IB mid. I mean, a decent sized move. So if you waited to enter here, we got down here where there's 19 ticks, right? To where we hit the IB mid, and then we start to see maybe potentially an increase. So note, I get delta divergence here as I put in a fresh low. I get positive delta. Also, I get some unfinished business here at the low, right? You'll notice this auction is not finished. Now the market kind of waffles, and then we get some unfinished business up on the top here. Now we start to head low. Note, we get 3 imbalances here, which triggers the red outline of this table. VPOC's kind of drifting lower here. Here's the imbalances. Right now, here we get delta divergence here. You'll note I get one tick lower, but then I go from a negative to a positive delta. We take care of all of that unfinished business up here, right here, which is why those lines end. Now we're heading back up, more unfinished business. Again, just kind of showing you some examples of where your combination of what you're looking at over here, being alerted to potential weakness up here as its first visit, and then as the market eventually now drifts. Now, whether or not you'd have stayed through all of that, right? It depends on the individual trader, what your stop and targets are. But you'll note as we drift, we stall, and then eventually, now you'll note what happens down here. Take a look here, and we'll wrap up with this. This you'll note here. We hit here at 10:30. So we haven't yet established the IB low. It's confirmed here. So this is our first visit to the IB low right here. Right, first visit IB high, first visit IB low. Right now we get just one tick through. Look at the reaction. So from here, from that one tick, we get 13 ticks off of it. First visit, right? Most important is that it's first visit, not any visit, first visit. So if you were looking at that, now that, of course, that's going to be tail end of the day. We're coming in at the last few minutes of the day. Don't know that you'd be trading, but it's just one more example of how you might use this. So let me just come back to where that area is here. So this is right here. So here's that bar. So we come down, we get all as we break for the first time, right? So here's the candle just preceding it. Then we get the break. Now as we break, note what happens. Right? Now we don't get a delta signal here, but at the low, now I get a pretty strong imbalance here. So I've got 282 to 33. We start drifting higher. Now I get 722. Now here we're just right at 4 o'clock. So you likely wouldn't be trading here, but just to see the example, 722 to 161, right? And then we get the big green bar here. Now we're just right at 4 o'clock. So imbalance, right? So they're just squaring up the end of the day. But you can see that example here, and then we get a surge here as we go higher, higher, higher. Then we get the 3. It's kind of a good example of how you use those. And then finally, I think I had one other example here for those that our teachings about measured moves here. So here being a good example as we work up here. Now we were just looking at the move here. Now would you have stayed with it? Well, look what happens right here. Now these may be too early in the day, so we'll just focus. We actually get 2 here, but we run out of time. So this is a good one here, right? It's it's going in the last hour of the day, but we get an upswing and we go right into, from swing high to this low, we go right into a golden zone. Note it's 65 to the tick, so we can go. Oh, that's at 1526 approximately. So let's go look over here and see how we might have played that through the order flow and footprint. 1526. So this would be here we are right here. So here we come right up to this. As we come into that high, we're approaching the open. Now you see as we come into it, we start delta signals start getting triggered. And you see negative delta. Now look where the POC is, and we've got imbalances heading down, heading down, heading down. Some unfinished business, a little pop up here for rotation. Then we continue lower, lower, lower through the course of the day. But here's a nice move here. Now we're going in, again, this is later in the day, but note here the negative deltas as we move down. Note the VPOC lower, lower, lower as we're heading down. We are getting some surge signals here as the market moves because we've gone from this high delta. Now we're negative, 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 all the way down to that I below, where we get the little the delta divergence here because we have a new low and then we get positive delta. But this is the kind of move that there's real power in seeing this. It wouldn't matter. Time of the day is not necessarily relevant. I just want you to see this. When you see a sequence like this that's popping and you see the negative delta, this is something you want to stay with. And then you could use, for example, you might be able to use the VPOCs here just as stop placement. So maybe one tick beyond those as we're moving lower and lower and lower, and then ultimately we get the reversal. So just kind of a good example of how you can use some of these tools to help refine not only entry but exit as well as stop management as you're working through. If you were in something like this off of the golden zone, the swing, the retrace, we actually get first and second target. Actually, we get second target here. The same type of thing. So it's just going to help you get more insight into appropriate timing here. Are we right? Because we never know, right, which one's going to hold. So we get into this now. If you can look into that bar and see what's happening based on the order flow, this gives us a real advantage as to whether or not we want to take this. And even with the kickback here, do you need to panic and get out of here, or is the order flow going to give you some insight into what's actually happening here while it's threatening that pivot? So certainly we get a rotation ultimately, and then we get the big drop heading lower, which we were just looking at over here after that pivot, and then we come down, 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 down. Right. So great insight. So it gives you a little more confidence pulling the trigger here and then letting her roll. Right. You can look for some more examples from us and training examples of putting this all together in some real time, as well as we'll go through some days here in the near future and look at the combination of how we might approach this in conjunction with more traditional TA and some of our methodologies and indicators and tools, and then adding in the order flow for extra precision. All right, with that, remember, you can always demo all of our indicators. You don't have to just specify one. You can request, we'll send you all of our indicators, and then you can choose which ones you want to look at. All right, this one, I think if you put a little time and energy into studying and watching, will give you great advantage in the marketplace, which is what we're all after. All right, guys, with that, I wish you a good day and good trading.